Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Kyle Tolsman, and you're listening to the Against All Average podcast, episode 17, the show where business owners and entrepreneurs come to learn the skills and mindset to lead exceptional lives. Today, I am joined by the one and only Jake. I have a voice for TV, but a face for radio, Spurley. What's up, Jake?
Says the guy who literally got out of the shower probably 10 seconds ago and his hair spiked up like mine was in third grade. All right.
Oh yeah. It is the newest, greatest, latest product, generic pomade that you can do. I like to throw the head in the sink real quick, get a little splash on the face, get the hair done, and oh boy, I look like the coolest third or fourth grader you've ever seen.
Oh gosh. Back when I was a kid, I'd do like little yellow or blue or green tips in front. So I think you just need a little bit of color and you'd be rocking.
Oh yeah, thanks. If you could just mail that over to me. I don't know where to find that, but it seems like you're a freaking expert.
You know, my hair back in the day was all about the colorful tips, dude.
Oh God, I'm glad I didn't know you back then. All right. Hey, Jake, I always find this sales tactic interesting. What do you do in the sales process when the client on the other end of the phone says that you're too expensive or they can't find the value? What do you usually do in that situation?
Well, if you get told it's too expensive, you haven't done a good job of showing the customer value in the first place. And then if they try and compare you to something else, no product is really apples to apples ever. There's always going to be differentiators. So now it's your job to figure out what they're trying to compare you to and figure out what your differentiators are in it. I mean, it's funny. Actually, just somebody today I was talking to, they're like, oh, it's pretty expensive after we went through value and stuff like that. And I said, all right, expensive is a relative term. So what is not expensive to you? And if this solution could make you X more than what you're paying, like, wouldn't that make sense regardless of the price? And they're like, oh yeah, I guess that kind of does make sense. So that's my take on it.
Right. It's just the way you word it and telling a good story and figuring out what your differentiators are, because you're just trying to find value for your clients anyway, right? You don't want your clients going with your solution if it doesn't bring value, right?
Yeah. And I think the other thing is also, it was actually funny. I kind of read an article on this morning actually about what to do when clients have price objections. And one thing the article had to say, and it totally makes sense, is if that comes up, you probably brought price up too soon. Meaning that you didn't build enough value before you showed your cards, and your card being the price. So
hey, that's a good one. That's a good tangible takeaway for our listeners out there. Hey, we love our sponsors on the Against All Average podcast. When you need all things digital looking their best, call our friends at Fame Pro Services. Our friends will give you the above all average treatment with an awesome new website, custom graphics, social media management, and a full line of printing services. Fame, the trusted partner of the Against All Average podcast. Jake, are you excited about this one? It's about to go down.
I'm just super excited to have somebody's voice that's actually meant for radio and stuff, and like not having to see his face to actually like, wow, that voice is just freaking money, because he's going to beat us both. It's whatever.
Yeah, he's just going to teach us a lesson on some old school headphone and mic setup, and he's just going to put us to shame. Our guest today leaves the Energizer Bunny in tears because he just can't keep up. He is a prime example of if you work hard, stay humble, and always come to the table prepared, you can lead a successful life. Dusty Harrah is currently the host of Dusty and Cam in the Morning on 1080 The Fan in Portland, Oregon, with former NFL tight end Cam Cleeland. But his resume doesn't end there. He's been a Sports Center update anchor, been part of the Miller Lite Tailgate Show covering college football, and has also been the co-host on Trailblazers Pulse. He's a husband, a father, a coach, and an overall amazing dude. From pushing buttons in the back room, from pushing buttons in the back room to finding his voice, please welcome Dusty Harrah to the show.
What's up, fellas? Man, you guys leave quite the introduction for me, and I'm sorry to let you all down with my voice that isn't like the typical radio guy voice, but nonetheless, it is here and it is on the radio, whether you like it or not. How's it going, fellas?
Hey, we're good.
Good.
I love it. Absolutely love it. It's just like so nonchalant, casually, like, yeah, well,
Yeah, it is what it is. Are you actually doing radio from home, or are you going into the studio, Dusty?
No, right now we've been going in the entire time. It's kind of it's a weird time for everybody, and but our building has only been open for hosts and for shows, and then everybody else is gone. So sales is out, managers are out. It's like a ghost town when we go in there. So it's a weird time, obviously, for everybody, but it's especially weird in the world of radio where, you know, we have our studios, but then everywhere else, the sales floor is always busy and people are always moving around and you're always talking with salespeople. And there's kind of that disconnect now where everything's done on Zoom or, you know, GoToMeeting or something like that right now.
Yeah, that was one question I had. I was wondering if you had to set up a studio in your house or how that was working. So that's interesting that you're still going in each and every day. Jake and I have seen each other, I don't know, once in the last probably 6 months to hand off some. No, we didn't even see each other then. When was the last time I even saw you in person, Jake?
I saw you in a McDonald's parking lot to give you some thank you cards so you could sign and mail
Oh.
back to me.
I remember our romantic date. It's now coming back. Oh, the two McChickens were freaking delicious. Hey, Dusty, talk a little bit about your background. You have a cool story. Talk about growing up, kind of a sports family. You went to 2 different high schools. What does it look like growing up as Dusty Harrah?
Yeah, man, it was like sports have always been a huge part of my upbringing. I mean, my dad was a football coach growing up. Like my first practice I ever went to when I was like a year and a half old was at Portland State. And then he coached at Pacific University in Forest Grove and then Lewis and Clark College until I was in middle school. So I was always just around football my whole life and around sports my whole life. I went to every practice, went to every game, home and away. Like got to stay with my dad's football players on the weekends and stuff, which is kind of weird. Like as a parent now, like thinking about sending my like 4 and 5-year-old kid with a bunch of college kids for the weekend. I'm not sure I would trust it, but it worked out for me. It was a unique upbringing to say the least, but it kind of formed how my love for and passion for sports really was from an early age. And then kind of living in Hillsboro, you know, he, on top of coaching football, he owned Helvetia Tavern and started the tavern there. So, you know, my 2 places were in locker rooms and a bar. So sports radio just kind of was like destined for me, I guess. And so it was sports have always been a big part of my life. And then, yeah, you mentioned it. I went to Gladstone High School because when my dad was done coaching at Lewis and Clark, he started coaching at Gladstone High and he said, "Hey, do you want to come live with me?" I was living with my mom. And he said, "You want to come live with me?" And so for a couple of years, I went out to a year and a half and went to Gladstone. And, you know, I love Hillsboro and I love, you know, you and I, we grew up and went to middle school together. And, you know, that community was so important to me that, you know, I wanted to go back to Glencoe and, you know, finish my high school there. And my stepbrother Josh McGinnis was playing football there. So I got to play 2 years of varsity football with my brother and, you know, had a great experience. And then from there, just went to Southern Oregon University was the next step for me. And that is really when my love for radio and my passion for radio took off, was at SOU, where I played football very poorly and really honed my craft in radio and got to be a play-by-play guy for Crater High School and host a radio show on the student radio station. So it was really the jumping off point of me diving full into sports radio.
That's awesome. And I remember one time we were out and about hanging out one night and you're like, "Yeah, I've got to drive to Medford tomorrow to do this radio show." And you're like, "You want to come?" Like, no, but you didn't want to go down there by yourself. You want somebody to talk to. And you're just like, I'm like, "Okay." Like, I think I was just like, that night I was just like, "Yep, I'll do it. No problem. Let's go." And I get into the car and I was like, "Okay, so what are we doing radio for?" And he's like, Well, we're going to be announcing the varsity girls basketball team, the Crater Lady Comets. Is that correct?
That's right.
Oh my gosh. And so we're stuffed into this little room. Dusty has his little briefcase and we start getting out all this audio equipment. I thought it was so cool. And starts doing play-by-play. I was the worst color guy you probably ever had. I was just sitting next to you and trying not to nod off. But there's this huge following in Crater of folks that listen to the radio and listen to Dusty, and we're super excited about it. So it's cool to see kind of where you started, the preparation you had, and where you are now. Talk about Southern Oregon, more about kind of the curriculum. What did the classes look like? And then when did you know you wanted to get into radio, and what steps did you take to know that you'd eventually get there? It wasn't a short road. It wasn't just like you ended up covering the Trailblazers.
No, it wasn't. Actually, where I started in like wanting to get into sports broadcasting was seventh grade. We had to do like the career projection thing. And I remember Miss Fletcher was my English teacher. Miss Fletcher made us go, and we had to write like a paper on what we wanted to do when we grew up. And I knew I wanted to be, something in sports, but oddly enough, professional athlete wasn't an option. So I just started looking. I did my like career day report was on sports broadcasting. And I was like, all right, that looks pretty cool. That looks like something I'd want to do. And so I was always kind of in the back of my mind of, go to a school that has journalism or broadcast journalism. And, I wasn't going to Washington State or Syracuse or any of those great broadcasting schools, Arizona State. So, when it came down to choosing a school for college, I still wanted to play sports, but I also wanted a place that had journalism. And, Southern Oregon, they have a communications degree and a journalism degree there. And, I really appreciate the fact I got a small school education because of the fact that, if I would have gone to Oregon or I would have gone to, Washington State or one of those big schools I was talking about, it would have been so hard for me to get actual opportunities. But at Southern, I got to write for the student newspaper, and horribly write for the student newspaper about, women's softball, which I did a disservice to how good they were because I didn't really know what I was writing about. But I got to talk to our radio guys for football, and they kind of pushed me. They said, hey, you can do this if you want to. And they kind of urged me and pushed me in the direction to start a radio show on the student radio station. And I did it with one of my good buddies down there, Brian Gregg. And then our radio guys, they kind of had some pull, and they said, you should just go and apply for the student manager of the radio station. I was like, I don't really know if I want to do that. But then I ended up becoming the manager of the student radio station and learning kind of the business side of how you operate and how you run a radio station and keep everybody happy. Because like, you guys know this, and everybody that works in business knows, nobody's ever going to be happy with you. Everybody's going to have a complaint, but juggling personalities and juggling how, you kind of massage egos from time to time and then keep everyone happy. It was a great experience for me. And then they said, all right, everything you've done, you haven't been dumb enough to say no to. So do you want to do Crater High School play-by-play? And then of course I did it. And you said you were bad at color. You were good at color because I didn't have a color guy. So anything was an upgrade from what I had at the time. And it was a lot of fun.
So what you're saying is I'm better than nothing.
You were way better than nothing. You were way better than nothing. And
we had so much fun.
I remember when we did it, I was just like, no matter what happens, we're on radio, so they can't see it. So, they're never going to know if you're wrong, Kyle. And you sold it, and you actually did a really good job. But yeah, that's kind of how, it was kind of taking my lumps. And I really learned at Southern, and the coursework was journalism, newsprint journalism. So I learned kind of the ethics of journalism and being correct and factually correct, and making sure you cross your T's and dot your I's, and make sure that, we have this problem right now, right? Everybody's saying fake news. Well, if you take yourself seriously and you are accurate and correct, then you have your credibility. And that's probably the best thing that I learned in school, besides never say no. Just say yes and jump on every opportunity you can.
And I think that's so important for our listeners to hear. Just say yes. Like you have these opportunities, you have people pulling for you, and you're like, I don't know if I'm ready. You know, I'm not too sure that I could run a radio station, but somebody puts it in your head, like, yes, you should apply. I think so many times we get stuck in those wheels turning. We sit around. Should I apply? Should I not? What's the worst thing that can happen? And you just spin yourself into all of these different negative thoughts. Before Jake goes and asks a couple questions he's dying to ask you, I want to talk a little bit about that positive mindset and preparation. What do those two things mean to you? Positive mindset and preparation, and how you've used those two things to become a very good radio broadcaster.
Man, it is from positive mindset. I always use, like, I write it down every single day on my show sheet. Energy is contagious. Like, energy is something that if you have energy and you have passion, people will pick up on it around you. And, we need those reminders. I need those reminders every single day. It's something that, I don't type it out and leave it on my show sheet. It is something that I handwrite down every single day, because it's that positive reinforcement for me. And that kind of is my centering thing, is energy is contagious. But there's a lot of negative, especially in the sports world, right? This guy sucks. That game sucked. This was terrible. That was terrible. And having a positive mindset, like, you always want to, it's easy to bash whatever it is, but the positive mindset is kind of turn that corner, and it makes you think a little bit deeper into whatever it is that's out there, because looking on both sides of it is something that if you can have a positive mindset going into something, you're going to end up putting out a more entertaining product, because it's going to be more well thought out. And that kind of falls right into preparation, which preparation for me, man, is just a lot of reading. And I was never somebody who really liked to read, but it is, for me, it's whether it's looking forward and ahead at schedules and scheduling of what's coming up and what's coming down the line, which has been ridiculously hard recently because there's been nothing to look forward to.
Right.
But it's all about reading and keeping up to date, and then not just going to one or two websites, but I mean, like, it is 6, 7, 8 different points of view of the information. And then you just kind of, once you get the facts and you get the understanding of what is happening, then you can create your own ideas of what is going to come out of it. And that's kind of where my preparation is. It's kind of a thought tree. You have a topic, and then all of a sudden you have all the branches that come off of it. And the ones with the most branches are the ones that we usually go with over the course of a show, because there's a lot of different avenues that you can go down.
And I think that's just one of the problems we're dealing with during this COVID. We also have an extremely active Black Lives Matter movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so many people don't do their research, and they're only seeing the one side. They're only seeing the one article. So I appreciate that you said that. And I think that's important for our listeners, not just as business people, but members of their community, to truly understand what's going on all sides. What does history tell us? Why are they writing it this way? Who's writing it this way? Who's behind it? Where does the money flow, et cetera? And I think you probably find a lot of that in sports, where I see it in politics right now, that are so divisive and so crazy right now, that I think the overall population of the world just does not do enough research into their topics and let all of the negative energy flow, or they only read something that fits their own mindset, their own agenda, and they don't really listen to both sides. And I think that's where I'd like to see the world, and the United States specifically, change, is trying to look at different views, listen to different views, and actively research what's going on. Because if not, we just create such a divided society, and I don't know, it's heartbreaking right now.
Doesn't it kind of seem like headline reading leads to half-baked ideas? And that's kind of where we get to, and you only pick and choose the headlines that you want to read, that kind of go along in your echo chamber and along your lines of thinking. And so you just kind of get caught up in it. And look, you got to read stuff that makes you feel uncomfortable at times, you know, or something that you don't like. And then if you read more than just one article or one story, you can also start separating what is fact and what is opinion. Because I think that's where a lot of this stuff gets kind of lost in the weeds, is every article will have the writer's take on it. And then, so if you read 2 or 3 stories on one topic, you know, then you're starting to see the same facts present themselves, but then you get to see where the opinion comes in, and you can then shape your own opinion on what's going on. You know, that's kind of how I always looked at it, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. You talk about positive mindset, and it seems like you're a super busy guy. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with a positive mindset when they're always super stressed. They're always juggling this, juggling that. I guess, one, how do you maintain a busy schedule, and how do you maintain that kind of positive mindset being so crazy busy all the time?
I mean, it's always just finding things that make you happy that are in it, right? I mean, the thing that I love my job, right? And then the things that always also keep me busy, like I coach high school football too out of Banks High School, is that I love doing that in the afternoons, and like having something to look forward to is always kind of something that'll bring you out of any sort of doldrum. But I mean, the one thing is making sure that you're keeping a schedule and, like, you know, having a schedule is important when you are busy, because it's like you're going to work and then I'm picking up the kids and then I'm dropping them off, and, you know, it's kind of like ships passing in the night with my wife sometimes, and we're always busy and running around. But making sure that you have that structure and you know where you're going and you know what you're doing. And then, you know, also, like, working out for me is one that I didn't do for a really long time, and stress was starting to eat me up. And when you get stressed out, you start getting depressed. And so being physically active was something that was really important for me, to kind of just take a break for an hour, unplug, don't worry about any of the things that could be stressors, and just let it rip, you know?
And I'm always mesmerized with people's schedules. Can you talk a little bit pre-COVID? What does your schedule look like, especially during the school year? Like, our listeners are going to be blown away with what your and your wife and kids, what the whole package actually looks like, and how you support your wife and your wife supports you, and how the whole home is driven to be successful because everybody's taking a little bit off the plate.
Yeah, my wife is a teacher, and, you know, like during football season, you know, pre-COVID, when I was coaching high school football, it was hectic. And my wife is a champ, man. She is the queen of the house, because she is balancing so many different things. So my schedule is I usually wake up at 3:50 or 4 o'clock in the morning if I hit on the snooze button, and then get quick shower, get out of the house, hopefully at work by, you know, 4:40, 4:45. I'm there from, you know, hour and 20 minutes before show, to make sure my thoughts from the night before are all kind of aligned, and we got the show sheet ready. 6 to 9 a.m. we have the show. From 9 to noon, it's recording spots, making sure any sort of business stuff is done, maybe meeting with producers, meeting as a show to kind of talk things out for, you know, what happened or what's going to happen the next day, looking forward at the week, and kind of that schedule, looking forward to what's coming down the pipeline. And then at noon, it was go and pick up my son from his daycare, because my son Bennett was 3. So I was picking him up from daycare, and then we would go home, he would take a nap. I would try to sort through any emails that came through, or during football season, it's watch film. When football's over, it was kind of a little bit more relaxed. And then 2:30, go and pick up my daughter, get my daughter from school, come back, get a quick snack in the car. I met my wife at like a Par Lumber parking lot every day. And that was like the switch off point where we just switch cars. I'd bust out to Banks for football practice, and then get home, you know, 7:30, get the kids to bed. And then it's about 2 hours of prep for the next day's show. And then, so that puts me at, you know, 10:15, 10:30 some nights, go to bed, do it all over again. When football season was over, though, it was a lot easier. And then it was just kind of no football practice, but, you know, then you have Blazer games that you got to stay on. You got to watch games. And I tell you guys, it is awesome having the cop out of, I got to watch this game, is for work. Because it works every time. And so when the game is on, like, it's not really working. But, you watch games in a different way when you have to talk about it all day the next day. But that was kind of a day in a nutshell. And then you just kind of take out football practice and insert, a little bit more time with the family during non-football season. And that is the day. And then my wife teaches. So thankfully we got Christmas break, spring break, and COVID breaks, summer vacation together to kind of have our family time together. But it is busy. And then on the weekends, I host pre and post game shows for our Ducks coverage. So it's heading down to Eugene on game days and heading into the studio on Saturdays. So it is, 6 or 7 days a week sometimes, just full tilt. Let's go.
Jeez.
That was
Intense.
a lot.
But it's fun. I never complain about it because some days I'll be tired, but it's like I keep it in perspective that it's not like I'm, digging ditches that entire time or
pumping out houses. I mean, there's things that are worse, right? Shoveling poop.
That's right.
I mean, there's, I don't know, perspective.
But but everybody kind of goes through this though, where I think if every person were to go through their day, they would have kind of a similar feeling about what their day is like. Like if you just put it into words and how, just throw it all out there into a word salad, you would go, man, everybody's life is busy like that. It's not like I'm not sitting down and having time to decompress every now and then and do that. It's go, go, go. But you find your moments and you got to pick and choose your moments because you would go crazy if you don't.
Yeah, for sure. Switching kind of gears a little bit. Let's talk about the fun because it seems like you're, I love my job. I love this. That's how I live. That's what gets me up every day. Talk about some of the most fun shows you've had the opportunity to host, or I guess games maybe.
Man, look, when I was doing work for NBC Sports Northwest, the Blazers playoff runs, anytime the Blazers are in the postseason, it feels different around here, right? I mean, during football season, you've got Ducks, you've got Beavers, you got in our listenership, you've got Huskies and Cougars that are all listening to the station too. And not everybody is kind of surrounded and galvanized by one team in particular. Oregon's run to the Rose Bowl was awesome this past year. It was kind of hey, the Ducks are back. When the Blazers are winning and when they're in the playoffs and it is rolling, those are some of the most fun shows that you can do because there isn't a person here that is divided on that. Laker fans will come out of the woodwork every now and then, but Portland is a Blazers town. And when the Blazers are rolling, there's nothing better. Those are some of my favorite shows to do is Blazers day after a playoff game and a playoff win because the city, there's a fervor around the Blazers. It's really fun.
Jeez, that's crazy. I guess going through your career, what's one thing you wish you would have known before starting out?
You're going to hear you don't want to say no to any of the opportunities, but you're going to hear no a lot. You're going to hear no. It's going to be a long road. Cause everybody that gets into it, you get into it because you want to be a show host, right? My career started literally pushing buttons for Mariners games to get in and out of commercial breaks and then doing, our board hopping stuff. And it was months of doing that. And then it became, hey, you can do some updates as a fill-in guy doing our Sports Center updates. Then it was every 20 minutes. Now it's every half hour. And then it was kind of doing a weekend show and then doing producing a show. But it was you try to get your foot in the door and you try to, get these hosting opportunities and they just don't come. And, other people get other chances and other people get other opportunities for different shows. And that is kind of the thing is if you were to set yourself up, there are some times where you just get down and that's, probably one of the reasons why I'm so, optimistic about what has happened. And I think that every business person and business leader can kind of relate to this aspect of, when you go through the rejection or you go through the failure, the little successes, and when you get to that point where things are starting to go well for you, it feels that much better, and you appreciate it that much more.
Yeah, that's that's so true with business. I mean, sometimes you're just getting your teeth kicked in day after day. You're trying to connect with different people. You're trying to grow your network. You're trying to know the right people. You're trying to have high energy and be present. And there's these things that you're just trying to, and sometimes it's just like you keep getting pushed down. You keep getting pushed down. It's like you can't find your marbles. You can't find your teeth. It's your abs are sore from getting up so many times, from getting kicked down. But then it like comes through, and you're just like, I knew it would work. I knew that would work. I just had to go through, and I think some people like I've said this on the show before. When I am the most drained, the most like pessimistic, just grumpy old man, I've just been grinding. It's like I've been chewing on gravel all day. Those are the times where the breakthrough is so close. And
Right.
usually within 12 hours of not sleeping for a couple days, eating horribly, just trying to grind and trying again in different avenues, that's when the breakthrough happens. And that's so cool that you talk about your own experiences and the ups and downs, and it can be dark, it can be depressing. And that's important for our viewers, our listeners, to understand that it's not all peachy all the time. It's not always rainbows and butterflies, but for you, it's worth it. You've created a lifestyle around something that you love. So I think that's so important. It seems to me that you're almost your own entity when you're a radio broadcaster or you're on TV. Like, you create your own personality, your own persona. How do you stay in that, not character, because I feel like you're so authentic in your shows. How do you stay there? How do you stay there mentally? How do you stay there with high energy? And do you ever worry about like walking the streets and not being Dusty Harrah, the radio show host? Or do you feel like you have that ability to relax because you're yourself? I hope you understand kind of where I'm getting with this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that everybody has, like, one thing you always want to do is like you be authentic and be who you are, right? And that's like the number one thing I think in like any walk of life and what you're doing, whether it's business or radio, is be authentic and be that person, because people see right through BS. You know, people will see right through BS. And if they don't do it immediately, as they get to know you and you go down the road a little bit further and a little bit further, your true colors end up coming out, right? And so, I mean, if you're authentic and you're just kind of yourself, then that is, you're going to be okay, and you're going to be comfortable in your own skin. And as far as like, look, high energy is just kind of always who I've been. I've always kind of been like whether it's a class clown in school or just kind of like a high energy guy in sports or life or whatever. I've always been bouncing off of walls. So that really isn't a problem. But you do have those days where it's like, oh my gosh, it's tough to get out of bed, and we all know it, but you've got to find a way to turn it on, because like it's noticeable, especially when you do radio, and the only thing that people can go off of it is your voice and how you're talking. So that is like something that, again, why I write down energy is contagious, is because of that. It's like you have to have that little reminder to pick you up and get going again.
And just to follow up on that, is, in your eyes, what's more important? Motivation, being motivated every day, or being disciplined?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. Look at you making me think.
It's not
Motivated
even,
or disciplined?
it's not even on the show notes either, Dusty.
I
We're
would
going
say,
big.
I know, motivated. I mean, motivated is it, because like, and this is kind of like inside baseball type thing, but like discipline is when you are like following the rules of radio. Like, hey, I've got to make sure I'm on the clock and I hit my ins and I hit my outs and all that. But if you're motivated and you are kind of, pushing forward and you are engaged, then everything else is going to be better. And so, motivation is exactly kind of what pushes good shows. And when, there's days you walk away and you're like, that kind of felt like a clunker. It's not what I wanted it to be. Some of the best shows that we have are ones that I'm like, okay, let's see if we can make it 3 hours here. And so those are some of the best ones. And then some of the worst ones are like, all right, we're going to nail this. This is easy. We got this. And then you walk away and you're like, I don't feel like that was the best effort ever. But if you're motivated and you can just kind of narrow in on something, you'll knock it out of the park.
I feel like along the way, like somebody, a mentor or a coach, somebody had to teach you that mentality, right? Like the motivation is kind of the key to it. You have to be driven, like all these things. Talk about, were there any kind of key players that really stuck out to you that kind of led you or taught you some of these things that really made you who you are?
Man, it's kind of a grab bag, it'd be lying if I said it wasn't, my dad, and kind of my dad, who was a coach, and I always saw the way he handled his players, and I kind of picked up on a lot of those things. But as far as like in radio, I was the producer for Primetime with Isaac and Sook, our afternoon drive show from 3 to 7. I was their producer for 4 years, I think. And those two guys, just kind of watching them from up close and afar and how they handled other people and each other. Those two guys were huge in kind of that motivating factor of, it doesn't matter if it's, some of the hot topics of the day, if they don't interest you, it's not going to land. Right. And so that was kind of they showed me a ton and have always been awesome to me in that regard. And then the two guys that I said are radio guys down at Southern Oregon, who always kept pushing me to and always taught me that don't say no. I mean, they weren't coaches, but they were guys that took me under their wing and they just said, go and do it, jump in and give it a shot. And if you screw up and you fail, oh, well, there's something else will come down the road. I mean, so Joe Brett and Pete Belcastro, those guys were awesome to me back when I was in college.
Yeah. And it seems like, they probably told you probably the same thing of say yes, take the opportunity, take this, do that. And I mean, because I think a lot of people don't understand, they think in radio or, news anchors, whatever, once you have your show, like you've made it. What are kind of your next step goals? I don't want to put words in your mouth of, oh, Dusty, you made it, dude. But like, what do the next 5 years look like for you? Like, what are your goals? Like, what do you want next?
The one thing that we have in radio is like, you're always motivated to hit another level is you get ratings, right? So, I mean, they're right there and they're in front of you. I mean, and that is where you sit there and you go, all right, we need to kick it up a notch. And then sometimes, for whatever reason, you'll have a ratings period that they dip down a little bit. And then you got to climb back up and you got to figure out what's wrong. And it's always evolving and always changing. So it really depends on every single day on what you do. But, for me, over 5 years, I love Portland. I was born here, raised here. I think this is a really unique market for sports radio as well, because only having the Blazers as our only, professional sports team or major professional sports team that we have here, we're not tied to like up in Seattle where you got to talk Seahawks and then you got to talk Mariners and, you have to pound those things and pound your head into the table every single day, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent. You got to pick and choose. And I think Portland is an awesome market for sports because we also have so many different fan bases. I bet if we went around here, our favorite NFL teams would probably be 3 different NFL teams because I'm a Patriots fan.
I'm a Bengals fan.
I just choose the Seahawks because they're close.
See,
you're one of those guys. One of those guys, huh?
At least I'm not a Patriot guy.
Whoa, easy now.
Jeez.
It was not great being a Patriots fan before Tom Brady. Since then, I have 0 complaints except for the cheating. But
deflate what? Deflate what?
Spygate, Deflategate, you name it, we've had it. But there's also 6 Super Bowl rings there, and that's what I keep falling back.
I just like sitting on the Bengals. I just like sitting on it. It's one of those things. Like I take the Warren Buffett model to my NFL team. It's just like if you just sit on it for 30, 40, 50 years, something good's got to happen. Well, I don't think that's Warren Buffett necessarily, but that's my philosophy. There's got to be something that's going to happen in the beautiful state of Ohio at some point. Please, please.
Joe Burrow's going to be the guy because Carson Palmer was, and then Andy Dalton was. I'm sorry for you, Kyle.
Oh man, you don't have to be sorry for me. I'm grateful. I'm the fan of the best NFL team in the league.
Oh gosh,
I don't know how many years running, but they're very very hard to watch sometimes. I digress.
Well, but to my point of that is a great thing about Portland, and what I love about Portland is that you can name the sport except for basketball and the NBA. You have got so many different people from so many different areas that sports radio is awesome. And so just kind of that is what I love about the city. And it's so unique for any other city in the country, really, for a major city, that is.
Yeah, that is one of the things that I don't like as much, right? I don't have as many opportunities to go to local professional games, but we're Duck season ticket holders. We go down there all the time, and we listen to your tailgating shows and all the different stuff going on as we're driving down to Eugene. So that's always fun. But yeah, it would be nice to have another professional team or two, and it'd probably make your job a lot easier.
I mean, Major League Baseball to Portland, it has me excited for this round. I mean, I know people want to, say it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I feel like it is, and everything is still moving in the right direction for it. And Major League Baseball to Portland, that's our next hope. So keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah, that would be absolutely awesome for the local economy to have that team in there. I'm a huge lacrosse guy, so a baseball team, it kind of rubs me the wrong way. I'd love to see a professional lacrosse team come in, but I do understand business. I do understand numbers, and it's a stick
and a ball sport.
Yeah, it is
close enough.
It is wonderful. I guess they're both stick and ball sports. I like baseball, but it was for me with the kind of my craziness is just like it's either a home run or a strikeout in my world. So consistency was not my deal when I was batting.
You were the first person I ever met that was actually into lacrosse. And like when we were in high school, nobody was quite into lacrosse as much as you were. And I didn't realize that people were into lacrosse. Like, you were the first person I ever met. And then like when I got to college, obviously we had guys that played lacrosse there. We had a guy from New York who it's like a life out there, but you were ahead of the curve in that regard with lacrosse.
Yeah, definitely. And that's helped me now as I run a small business in the lacrosse world. There was only so many coaches available. I went down, I played at the University of Oregon, and then I was the defensive coordinator there in 2000. What year would that have been? 9, maybe, something like that. Went back there, and my mentor, Joe Kerwin, who's now the head coach at Westminster out in Salt Lake City, Utah, D2 school. There wasn't that many people that had that experience and had somebody. Joe had traveled around to different Division II schools and was really a bright mind from New Jersey and a great teacher of the game. So that's really what kind of helped myself as I got started into this and coaching. I used to be the head coach at Glencoe High School, was that there's just not that many people that really understand the game that deeply and have devoted so many hours, not just to playing or physical fitness, but to truly understand the game and cut up video and be prepared. Like you say, when I'm a coach, like I know what the other team's going to do. Sometimes I can't stop it, but at least I know, what's going on. Maybe that's the Bengals philosophy too. They know what's going on. They just can't stop it. Dusty, talk a little bit about if there's one turning point in your radio career, what was it? Who was the connection, or what show did you get on that really made you breathe a little bit easier during the day, sleep a little bit better at night?
I mean, that's a really good question, because I don't know. I don't know if there was that moment, because I still feel like I'm kind of waiting for that moment. Like that's one of the things too, is that when you ask like, hey, what is one of those things that you wish you would have known, is that you see a lot of people come and go, in the industry. Like you see a lot of people who think that they've got it figured out and they're locked into a spot, and then all of a sudden, boom, rugs pulled out from under them, and they're out on the streets. But I think if there was one thing that kind of started making me feel like, all right, this is what I'm heading in the right direction, I'm doing the right things, is when I went from just being a part-time guy to all of a sudden coming into being a full-time producer of our afternoon drive show. Because then it was, getting the more opportunities to do some television work with then Comcast Sportsnet, and now NBC Sports Northwest. That came along with it. Just kind of, all right, I'm more visible, and if I keep kind of doing what I'm doing, I'm heading in the right direction. So I think that was probably the moment, not like a connection to somebody that I made or anything like that, because I've been really lucky to be, my first job was at the Fan, and I've just kind of worked like the Swiss Army knife of doing everything up there and just kind of stair-stepping my way up.
Do you think the uncertainty of your position and seeing, like you said, so many people get the rug pulled out from underneath them keeps you motivated and like keeps you on your game and like excited for just being able to host a show every day, knowing that like legitimately tomorrow they could be like, see you later, Dusty?
Yeah, I mean, it is it sucks sometimes, but it's like you look at it and you go, all right, yeah, it is motivating to have that kind of, I don't know if it's not a fear, because you don't, if you're working afraid, you're not going to be working productively, right? And you're not going to be putting out your best product or your best effort, if you're always looking over your shoulder like something's going to happen. But it is driving and kind of motivating, as you said, to, all right, hey, you want to keep moving forward. And it really does, it makes you reassess kind of what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, and trying to fix those things a little bit more, and being more cognizant of it. Is like, all right, nothing is guaranteed, past whatever the final year of your contract is.
And you mentioned a little bit about fear. What is your relationship with fear? Do you have fear that the show's not going to go well that day? Did you used to wake up, or do you currently wake up with like, I've got to get moving, I've got to get to work, I've got to get the pen and paper moving, I've got to get the computer keyboard humming? Like, what is your relationship with fear, and how does it get you going and get you to that next level where you need to be someone with a certain personality, a certain energy, but fear might come in a little bit? What's your relationship?
Yeah, you get kind of calloused a little bit with like, it used to be, what are people going to think of me? And then you realize that like people, especially like whether it's social media or, our text line or whatever, like people will there's just a faction of people that just won't like you for no reason at all. Right. And then after you get over that, then it is kind of like, right now, the fear in like growing up and having kids, like that obviously helps a ton with perspective on what bothers you, what worries you, because like nothing about my job will worry me as much as, my family. Right. And like, that is, it sounds like a okay kind of thing to say, but it's real. Like it's real. Like you think about things completely differently. Like now my fear in that wake up and just be like, oh my God, like we've got to find something. We have done 84 shows now with zero sports, like zero sports. From March 11th to now, we've had 84 shows of zero sports. Like finding things to talk about that people will be engaged in and interested in. Like there are days and there are times where I'm like I get the sweats. It's like, oh my gosh, we don't really have much of anything to talk about today. And then like, that's what starts getting, the juices flowing of, all right, time to be creative. This show may have absolutely nothing to do with sports, but we're going to make it entertaining for people. And that's kind of like what the fear is now, is there literally is zero sports going on in our world.
That's just wild, that 84 different shows where you've had to come up with 3 hours of content that dabble in sports, probably dabble here and there. I'm usually in bed, Dusty. I'm not gonna I'm not going to act like I'm
It's okay.
the early riser. I usually sleep in until like 8 or 8:30, and I don't remember to turn it on. But every time I do listen during the school year, it's always fun hearing you guys banter back and forth and create that entertainment.
Do you know what I would give to sleep till 8:30, Kyle? Like,
What? Please tell
I
me.
just,
What would you give?
I don't know. Do you want one of my kids? Because I give one of them to you. Like maybe not forever, but for a little bit. Just to get to 8:30 one day.
Man, I just wish that show Little People Big World on Discovery Channel. They're filming right down the street, and I would just love for you to look into the wild world of sports, so to speak, inside my house with a 7-year-old, 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old, and 2 dogs. One dog can't really walk too well anymore. The other one, the kidneys aren't working so well, so they're having their own issues. I have to lift the dog onto the bed before every podcast. The other kids down the street, one kid the other day dumped gas, like gasoline, found a gas can, and they're just messing around, like dump gas on my son. Like this is a month ago. So like my days, you're like, what I wouldn't give to just sleep in a little bit. Man, I'll let you sleep in. You come over here and watch my kids, and you hang out all day. We'll just do a little tradesy, and I'll try to figure out what the heck I'm going to talk about. If I don't have to talk about sports, I'll be gold. I'll be fine.
Your life sounds wild right now.
Oh my goodness. I can't, man, schools better open up. Schools better open up. We better start seeing some COVID cases go down low, or else I'm going to be in a dark place. I'm going to need some serious help.
I love it.
Oh, geez. You're probably going to get DHS calling you after they hear this too.
Oh yeah, it's okay. I YouTubed it. I figured out how to get the gasoline smell off of a 7-year-old, and we're ready to roll. Just don't light too many matches inside our house.
Jeez. Dusty, a couple stories and a hop, skip, and a jump ago, you were talking about haters and kind of like the fear of that.
Yeah.
How do you handle haters? Because I know you just got a couple more by saying you're a Patriots fan on here. How are you gonna handle that, dude?
It is you just learn to ignore it, either that or kill them with kindness, because engaging them and like trolls are real, and when you meet them in person they're completely different. Like you will meet somebody and face to face they'll be completely different from what they are in their online world. And so, it really is either you kill them with kindness, but I just go with, I'll never engage them, because that's what they want. They want a reaction out of you, and they want a negative reaction out of you. But kind of ignoring them is mostly what happens now. And, once you ignore them enough, they just go away. I mean, at the beginning of, the shows that I was doing, like, yeah, you get them a lot more, but then either you meet them and they realize you're a person just like they are, and you're not that horrible of a human being, or, you ignore them to the fact that it doesn't become fun for them anymore. And then, the people that are, and it's just like, everyday world. Like if you don't like your neighbor across the street, you're probably just going to put your head down and just ignore them, rather than, do the Hatfield and McCoys and just yell at each other from across the street, which can be fun at times, but then you want to live your life normally. And, right. And that's the best way to go about it. But it was hard though. I mean, like having somebody that doesn't know you say that they like, you're an idiot or they hate you or whatever. Like at the beginning, that's kind of jarring, and you're like, well, what's the reason for this? And you engage them a little bit more, and you want to find out why, but then you just kind of realize there's nothing you can do. And Isaac Ropp told me this when I was interning at the Fan in college. He said, for every one person that says something negative and like goes out of their way to say something negative, there's 9 other people that think you're doing just fine. And like, that is kind of the way that you gotta handle it and approach it, because like, that you step in it though, if like all of a sudden it starts flooding and you're like, uh-oh, that wasn't good. But luckily I'm not there yet.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Whether you're on radio or TV, or you're just being successful or being yourself or saying something on social media, somebody's not going to like what you say. And if you're constantly just going to filter yourself based on the one loudest voice,
Yeah.
it's going to be extremely hard to get your message across.
But you also have to put yourself out there, right? I mean, like, you have to put yourself out there, and you're not going to really go anywhere if you're not putting yourself out there and kind of letting it all, bear all. I told my wife, like, when we started like seriously dating, I'm like, kind of an open book. So there's probably going to be some stories that you don't like that I'm going to tell. And this is the way it is, like, I don't know if my kid is, does something embarrassing, other people can relate to it. And it's funny for people to hear those kinds of stories. Unfortunately for my kids, like, sometimes those stories are going to be heard by the city of Portland. Like, plenty of them about me too. So we just kind of, it's a family deal.
And that's the difference. That's the difference between you and I, Dusty. I didn't have to tell my wife that I was an open book and that there's going to be stories every single day that she didn't like. So it's always interesting. We started this podcast. We're up to, this is the 17th episode. It's going to air, I believe, next Friday. But yeah, it is interesting when you start to put your ideas out there. You start to actually take a stand and start saying what you actually believe. And when you do that, you're putting yourself out there. As we wrap things up, Dusty, this has been absolutely amazing for our listeners. Where can we find you on the radio, on TV, and on social?
On the radio, 1080 The Fan, the radio.com app. As well is we're at AM radio 1080 The Fan, and then social media at Dusty_Harrah. I have only committed myself to Twitter, so I feel like my life would be taken over if I was on Instagram, which I know is a loss. But that's the other thing. Balance and finding balance, like not just jumping down that rabbit hole, is something that I did for a while, and it was miserable. So I just figured if I stay away from Instagram, I can figure out, what happens in the news. But Twitter at Dusty_Harrah, man.
That's awesome. And let's leave the listeners with one piece of advice. You've come from basically the bottomest pit of radio as far as you've done everything. You said, I will do anything. If you hire me, I'll do anything to get into radio. If you have one piece of advice of how you've gotten to where you are, or a little tactic that you've learned along the way, tell our listeners what you think about that.
Yeah, we already talked about it earlier, but never say no. And always say yes to opportunities when they come your way, because you never know what they're going to turn into. And then, I mean, the other thing is, it's that golden rule that our parents always teach us and we've learned in school: just treat people the way you want to be treated. Because, if you're stepping on other people's throats to get to the top, that it will get exposed. It'll be good for a minute, but you'll get figured out pretty quickly. I mean, those are the things that, man, I haven't reached a pinnacle of anything by any stretch of the imagination, but, it's made me happy through my life, and I keep on churning forward little by little. So it's working for me, man.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Dusty.
Thank you guys, man. This has been fun.
Yeah, it's always fun getting these podcast episodes with my friends. When I started the podcast, I didn't really think of friends. I thought I needed to reach out to all these entrepreneurs and successful people on social media. And then I started thinking, well, like, I probably have 50 episodes in me of just successful friends. So this is another episode that wasn't necessarily business specific, but there was so much gold dropped about how you live your life and your passion for it, and motivation and preparation. All of these skills that we talked about today can help out entrepreneurs. So thank you again.
I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you so much. It was awesome to be on.
Awesome. In order to grow the podcast, we need your help. Please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform and tell a friend about every episode you find value in. And share the episode on your favorite social media platform. If you like the episode, please rate the episode a big old number 5 and leave us a review. You can find us at Against All Average on all of your favorite social media platforms and at www.againstallaverage.com. Another big shout out to Dusty Harrah of 1080 The Fan and this episode's sponsor, Fame Pro Services. And with that, we thank you for listening to episode 17 of the Against All Average podcast. We'll see you next time.